Titan, the descent into darkness. The North Atlantic stretched endlessly before the polar prince, its surface a deceptive calm masking the abyss below. Aboard the ship, the air buzzed with anticipation and unease. It was the 18th of June, 2023, and the Titan Submersible, a sleek but controversial vessel, prepared for its descent to the Titanic wreck, 3,800 meters beneath the waves. Stockton Rush, OceanGate's charismatic and polarizing CEO, stood at the heart of the operation, his eyes alight with the fire of ambition. To him, this wasn't just a dive, it was a chance to etch his name into history, to rival the likes of Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. His crew, a mix of wealth and expertise, trusted him, though whispers of doubt lingered like a fog. Inside the cramped, cylindrical hull of the Titan, Stockton adjusted his headset, his voice steady but tinged with excitement. "All systems green," he said, glancing at his four passengers. Paul-Henri Nargeolet, a French deep-sea explorer with decades of Titanic dives under his belt, sat calmly, his weathered hands folded, eyes scanning the sub's interior with a quiet scrutiny. Hamish Harding, a British billionaire adventurer, grinned, his thrill-seeking nature barely contained in the tight space. Shahzada Dawood, a Pakistani-British businessman, shared a reassuring look with his 19-year-old son, Suleiman, whose nervous energy was palpable. The weight of the moment pressed against the carbon fiber walls, a vessel Stockton had championed despite years of warnings. The hatch was bolted shut from the outside, sealing the 5 men inside. There was no turning back now. The Titan detached from its platform, sinking slowly into the inky depths. The Polar Prince's crew monitored from above, their screens displaying depth readings and text messages from the sub. "All good here," Stockton texted at 2,274 meters, his tone casual, almost defiant. But below the surface, the ocean was a merciless force, its pressure building with every meter. Stockton had always been a man of big dreams. A Princeton-educated engineer turned entrepreneur, he founded OceanGate in 2009 with a vision to democratize deep-sea exploration. The Titanic, a global obsession, was his ultimate prize. There are 3 words everyone knows: Coca-Cola, God, Titanic, he told a reporter once, his voice dripping with confidence. But his methods were unorthodox. The Titan's carbon fiber hull, lighter and cheaper than traditional titanium, had raised eyebrows. Experts like David Lockridge, OceanGate's former director of marine operations, had called it an abomination, warning that the material could delaminate under extreme pressure. In 2018, Lockridge had been fired for raising these concerns, his warnings dismissed as overly cautious. Stockton believed in pushing boundaries, in breaking the mold of conservative engineering. "Rules are for people who don't trust their designs," he'd once said, a mantra that now echoed in the tight confines of the Titan. As the submersible descended past 3,000 meters, the interior grew colder, the air thick with the scent of metal and anticipation. Suleiman fidgeted, his fingers tapping against his knee. "How much longer, Dad?" he asked, his voice soft but edged with unease. Shahzada placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his smile warm but strained. "Not long now, Suleiman. We're making history." Paul Henry, or PH, as he was known, offered a nod of encouragement. "The Titanic's worth it, kid. You'll see." His French accent carried a weight of experience, but even he couldn't ignore the faint creaks emanating from the hull, sounds that seemed to pulse with the ocean's heartbeat. Stockton, at the controls, remained unfazed. "We're at 3,500 meters, he announced, his eyes fixed on the touchscreen display. The sub's interior was a blend of high-tech and makeshift. A joystick from a video game controller guided the vessel, a fact Stockton had boasted about as proof of his innovative spirit. Hamish, ever the optimist, chuckled. "Feels like we're in a sci-fi movie, doesn't it?" But the humor didn't land as well in the dim, claustrophobic space, where the only light came from the faint glow of monitors. At 3,700 meters, the Titan was just shy of the Titanic's resting place. The passengers leaned forward, straining to catch a glimpse through the small viewport. The ocean outside was a void, blacker than night, swallowing the sub's external lights. Then, a faint shape emerged, a rusted bow, the ghostly outline of the Titanic's prow. Suleiman gasped, his fear momentarily replaced by awe. "There it is," PH whispered, his voice reverent. For a moment, the group was united in wonder, the weight of their journey forgotten. But the moment was fleeting. A sharp crack, like a gunshot, echoed through the hull. The sub lurched slightly, and the monitors flickered. Stockton's hands froze on the controls. "What was that?" Shahzada asked, his voice tight. PH's eyes narrowed, scanning the readouts. "Pressure," he said simply, but the word carried a chilling weight. The ocean at this depth exerted over 5,500 pounds per square inch, enough to crush a human body in an instant. The Titan's hull, untested at these extremes, was the only barrier between them and oblivion. Stockton regained his composure, his voice steady. "Just a stress sound. The hull's designed for this." But his words lacked their earlier confidence. He tapped the screen, sending a text to the Polar Prince. "Minor noise, all systems nominal." The response came quickly. "Copy. Keep us posted." Above, the crew on the Polar Prince exchanged glances. The sub was now beyond the reach of rescue, a fact, unspoken but heavy in the air. Minutes passed, each one stretching into eternity. The creaks grew louder, more frequent, like the groans of a dying beast. Suleiman clutched his father's hand, his breathing shallow. Hamish, usually unflappable, sat rigid, his jaw clenched. PH's eyes darted between the hull and the depth gauge, calculating risks in silence. Stockton kept his focus on the controls, but sweat beaded on his forehead. "We're fine," he said, more to himself than the others. "We're fine." At 3,800 meters, the Titanic's deck came into full view, its skeletal remains hauntingly beautiful, but the awe was short-lived. A low, ominous groan reverberated through the sub, followed by a sudden jolt. The lights dimmed, then surged back. "Stockton," PH said sharply, "check the hull integrity." Stockton hesitated, then pulled up the sensor data. The readings were erratic, fluctuating wildly. "It's just a glitch," he insisted, but his voice cracked. Above, the Polar Prince lost contact. The last message from the Titan was garbled, a string of fragmented words. "Noise, hull, checking." The crew tried to re-establish the link, their voices rising with urgency. "Titan, do you copy?" "Titan," silence answered. On the surface, the reality set in. Something was wrong, catastrophically wrong. Inside the Titan, panic took hold. The hull groaned louder, a sound like metal being torn apart. Water began to seep through a seam near the viewport, a thin but relentless trickle. Suleiman's eyes widened in terror. "Dad, we're leaking." Shahzada pulled his son close, his own fear barely concealed. Hamish cursed under his breath, his bravado gone. PH grabbed Stockton's arm. "Surface, now." But Stockton shook his head. "We can't. The ballast system's not responding." His fingers flew over the controls, desperation replacing his earlier bravado. The truth was dawning on them all. The Titan was failing. The carbon fiber hull, Stockton's gamble, was no match for the ocean's crushing force. Cracks spiderwebbed across the interior, invisible but audible, each one a death knell. The subsystems began to shut down one by one. The air grew thinner, the temperature plummeting. Suleiman's voice broke as he whispered, "I don't want to die." Shahzada held him tighter, tears streaming down his face. "We're together," he said, his voice trembling. "That's what matters." PH, ever the pragmatist, began calculating their oxygen reserves, his mind racing for a solution where none existed. Hamish stared at the viewport, the Titanic's silhouette now a cruel reminder of their hubris. Stockton, for the first time, was silent, his hands limp on the controls. The man who had dreamed of conquering the deep was now at its mercy. The end came swiftly. A deafening crack split the air, and the hull imploded in a fraction of a second. The ocean reclaimed the Titan, crushing it into nothingness with a force no human design could withstand. The 5 men Stockton, PH, Hamish, Shahzada, and Suleiman were gone, their dreams and fears swallowed by the abyss. Days later, the world learned of the tragedy. Debris from the Titan was found scattered across the ocean floor, fragments of carbon fiber and titanium mingling with the Titanic's wreckage. The Polar Prince's crew, devastated, recounted the final moments of contact. News outlets buzzed with speculation, while experts pointed to the sub's untested design, OceanGate's cost-cutting measures, and Stockton's dismissal of warnings. Lockridge, the whistleblower, spoke out, his voice heavy with vindication and grief. "I told them," he said. "I told them it wasn't safe." The Titan disaster became a cautionary tale, a modern echo of the Titanic itself. Both were feats of ambition undone by hubris, by the belief that human ingenuity could tame the untamable. Families mourned, investigators probed, and the ocean kept its secrets. The Titanic, resting silently in the dark, remained a siren's call, luring dreamers and daring them to defy the deep. For Stockton and his crew, the dream had been everything until the ocean claimed its price.